ease into the process and get started. So, hi everyone, my name is Richard. I'm a solutions engineer at Strapi. My day-to-day role is just making sure that everybody who uses Strapi is as successful as they can possibly be. So I mainly work with the community members. Some of you people we've met maybe on GitHub, maybe on Discord and stuff like that, maybe even on the forum. And we also work with customers because Strapi does have an enterprise version, and we work with customers and provide support at various levels and help them get through their usage of Strapi. So I guess to know more about the enterprise side of Strapi, there is a link there I've posted inside the chat. That's what's going to share more about that stuff. But yeah. So in today's workshop, I'm going to be talking a bit about customization in Strapi. We're going to touch on a few aspects of customization with Strapi, right? So you're going to have your controllers, your services, policies, webhooks, and routes. We're going to touch on a few other aspects outside of that, but I think these are the main parts of what we're going to be talking about today. So yeah, for this workshop, I'm gonna have we're mainly just gonna be working with the Strapi backend, to be honest. We're going to be making API requests to the Strapi backend, but we're also going to be doing some customizations, right, to this Strapi backend. So for this workshop, I came up with a tiny use case, basically, that tells us a bit about what we're trying to achieve and why we're trying to achieve it, right? For this use case, we have a shop that would like to be able to take in orders from users of their app or their website, and it'd like also these people to be able to confirm these orders, right? So for that, there's a few things that already, from what I've mentioned, are part of Strapi and some that are not part of Strapi, right? And the things that aren't part of Strapi is what we're trying to achieve, right? So we're giving ourselves this use case to be able to achieve what we want to achieve. Oh, by the way, I'm based in Zambia, so if anybody is based in Zambia, go ahead and drop a Zambia emoji. Be happy to see you. So yeah, let's get started. I'll just go ahead and share my screen here, and you can let me know in the chat if you can see what I'm broadcasting. Okay, can anybody see my screen now? You should be able to see a Google Chrome. Yeah, there it is. Nice. Great. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm just going to walk everybody, I'm going to try to walk through like the initial setup of what I did, explain some of the stuff that I have pre-prepared and some of the stuff that I don't have pre-prepared, and we can start from there. So right off the bat, we're going to move to our code editor. I hope you can see that as well. Can you see my VS Code editor? I'm also gonna zoom in just so the font is a bit better. Is that font size right? Perfect. Okay. I'm glad everybody can see what I'm showing. So Here I have a Strapi application, right? So this is just like a boilerplate application. Rather, inside this folder, I created inside this folder of mine, we have two applications. We have one called order service and one called backend. I'm going to explain what order service is. And yes, Abel, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, it is a relatively empty application. So there has not been any customization done except for me like signing into the admin and creating two content types, which I'm going to show you. Yeah, definitely. I'm going to share this. I will also tweet the link for this. It's actually my Twitter is that. So I will be tweeting about this immediately after I'm done, after I upload this code to GitHub. Okay, so no, there's no template for this. This is just a boilerplate. It's just like a blank application we're going to be working on. We're not going to make it extremely complex, right? We're going to touch on the aspects of what's going to get you going with customization and some of the things to think about as you're customizing your Strapi application. Okay. So yeah, what we have right here is the code, like I mentioned, the Strapi application. This is just an application that you see here. It's running version 4.2.0 alpha, right? I'm running the Strapi alpha for this, and you'll know why for a reason in a bit. But there's nothing special. You can use the most stable version of Strapi, and this is going to work exactly as is. My database is just SQLite, nothing special. The other thing I've done here is configure SendGrid email, right? To be able to send out emails for a purpose you'll be able to see as well soon. We'll show that as we go on. So yeah, let's go ahead and launch our Strapi application by running yarn develop. So you can take a look. Yes, it is recording, and it will be uploaded to YouTube later. We will be tweeting about it after the, or actually you should be able to see it on YouTube as soon as possible. So now that our Strapi application is running, as you can see here, we're going to switch over to our browser. And inside our browser, we're going to go to localhost 1337/admin. I'm going to increase the font. As you can see, I have dark mode enabled on my Strapi version. So this is available in the latest alpha of Strapi. So that's why I did it here, just for the dark mode, to be honest. That's my email. I'm going to enter my password. Remember me, please. Great, we're in. Now, inside here, I mentioned that I created two content types. Inside our content type builder, we're able to see that I've created one order content type and one product content type. So we're going to take a look at the product content type side of things first. This is basically just two fields, the name and the product code. These aren't particularly anything that's supposed to be sensible or extremely useful. We're doing them just for illustrative purposes, right? You have to, this would fit your use case. And the order content type. So the order content type has got about 4 fields. One is called owner, which is relation with the user from user's permissions. This is how the relation looks. It's just a one-to-one relation, right? Or actually a one-way relation. One order has one user. We have a Boolean field called confirmed. We have confirmation date. And we have products, which is also a relation. So we want one order to have many products in this project. And yes, exactly, nothing much. You haven't missed nothing much. I'm just giving you an overview of what the project is. It'll be recorded, so you'll be able to go back from where you started. So don't worry too much about that. You should be fine. Okay, so moving on from there, that's pretty much all that we have. Like I mentioned, this is a store we're trying to, or a store API we're trying to build, right? We're able to return products and orders, of course, because Strapi is going to provide you with a pre-created API for most of your content types, or all of your content types actually. So you're going to have CRUD operations for these content types already available. If you go to settings, roles, and maybe public and take a look, you have these predefined for you, right? On the product and on the order content type. But what we want is we want to take it a step further and add in that other amount of customization. What we need today as a dev, right, we have a feature request, which is we need people to be able to confirm those orders that they have made. This is really important, right? So how can we do that with Strapi? Obviously, you're not going to have the most, I guess, the most simple or naive way of doing it is just using the update API and setting this to confirm, then setting a date. But then again, you have to realize that in certain situations, right, there's a bit more that you need from that, except there's a bit more that you need except just that, which is what we're going to touch on. Okay. So yeah, let's get started into our source code. We'll jump back here. And the first thing we're going to do, knowing that we need to be able to confirm our orders, is to make sure that we are able to actually have controllers, routes, and all that set up, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a blank controller, right, inside our Strapi application. So we're just going to go ahead and stop this, and we're going to run yarn Strapi generate. And inside there, we're going to create a new controller. We're going to name it confirm order. Or we're just going to name it that, confirm order, like that. So do we want to add it to a new API or an existing API? In our case, we want to add it to a new API, which is the order API. Done. So we have a folder created for us inside the API order controllers and confirm order.js file. If we go over and take a look at that, inside the SRC, API, order, controllers, confirm order. Nice. So we have our boilerplate controller created for us here. So we're going to create an example or an example action, which we're just going to call confirm, right? Which, just so you know, maybe I'll leave this here for you to be able to see just the structure of the controller. It's an asynchronous function, right, which takes into parameters the context and next, basically. So we're going to do exactly that, or in the exact same structure, we're going to call it confirm. It's an asynchronous function. It's going to take in the CTX and next. And that's our body. So for now, we're just going to return ctx.body equals okay. So we've set up like a custom controller right now. This is basically all you need to do to set up a custom controller. You're done. The next thing that we may want to do now is actually set up a route for this controller, so we're actually able to access this controller, right? And to do that, we're going to go over to our routes here. And inside our routes, we can create a new file. My theme is called GitHub. My text editor is, or my font actually is called Cascadia Code by Microsoft. So we're going to name this confirm order.js. So what we're doing now is we're going to be creating custom route definitions, right? The reason for this is, say, inside here, we do have core controllers already created for us, or core routes actually created for us by default. Now, if maybe you don't really want to tinker with these, or you don't really want to change anything about this, you don't have to. I'll show you how we can do it both here and in a new file, right? So you don't actually have to make a change to this if you don't have to. Say you have a large suite of routes that have to do with order confirmations, for example, you can drop all of them inside this file, and I'll show you how we can do that. So before that, let's go ahead and create the route and the way the route is supposed to look. Sorry, I'm just taking a look at the chat to see how many questions we have in there and what people are asking. So does the core route already have CRUD routes by default? Yes, exactly. So this is what this factory does for us, right? It actually attaches those default routes for create, read, update, and delete. There we go. Would you like me to enlarge the font? Sure. Is that better? Okay, cool, nice. Cool. So yeah, that's the main point of that basically, right? Which is it's a really good thing. So like I was talking about, we're now going to attach this controller to a route basically, because we want to be able to see what we're actually defining, if that makes any sense, or we want people on the outside world to actually be able to access this controller that we've specified, or this controller that we've created. So inside our new file, what we're going to do is we're going to export an object from this file, right? Not a function, but an object. So to do that, we're going to do module.export equals, and we're going to specify a route key on this object. And this route key is going to be an array, okay? Inside that array, our routes are going to be represented as objects with a few keys. We're going to create an object. We'll create a few keys, okay? One of them that we need is the method of this route, which is going to be a post. Another is the path, okay? In our case, it's most likely going to be orders. And for this use case, I'm going to pass in, I'm going to say confirm, and then do ID like that. So this :ID is a URL. It's going to be a dynamic URL parameter. So this is going to change based off of the ID we're trying to confirm. And we're going to specify the handler. This handler key basically tells the route what controller to use. In our case, we're going to use the one from the order API. And from the one from the order API, we're going to use confirm order. And we're going to pass in another dot, because this is our file, right? Confirm order, that's our file. And other than that, we also have to specify the name of the controller, which is confirm. No, not yet. We're going to upload this code, and you can check it out from my Twitter. My Twitter is @RK_Nsama. I'll tweet about it, and also the Strapi page is going to tweet about it, I believe. So we're going to specify that here as well, and say confirm. Cool. So just like that, we've been able to create a route to our controller, which is this, without messing with our core routes, right? So if we ever wanted to change something about our core routes, for example, if maybe we want, I'll actually show you how to change something about the core routes in a bit, but you can always pass in an object here, right? You can actually see there you have type sense enabled for those of you who have type sense enabled on your code editors. You're able to see this is a router configuration. You're able to pass in more router configuration here. So for now, we don't need that for this particular case. So we'll just get rid of that. So let's touch base and see if what we've done is okay. We're going to run yarn develop. We have an error. So basically, it said it can't find the property called confirm. This has something to do with how we defined our handler here. We'll get rid of that and run it again. So these are some of the few things that you need to keep an eye out for when you're defining your routes, right? So twice now, this isn't working, and you're going to have to find out, you're going to have to ask what is it that's actually been done wrong here that we need to work out. Can anybody guess what we're doing wrong in this particular case? Can anybody post it in the chat just to guess what we're doing wrong and why the route can't actually figure out what our handler is? No, there is a handler method actually. We created it inside there. No, we don't need to import anything. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So the context, not the context, but the syntax actually for defining controller or defining handlers for your routes, if you have a separate file and if you're doing them inside your core route factory, is different. Let me show you how this would work if you're going to define it inside your core routes factory. Inside here, actually inside your core controller factory, correction. Inside here, you have order.js, which is our core controller. What we would do is pass in a function that takes something as a parameter, but from that something, we want to pull out specifically Strapi. So we're destructuring it and just pulling out the Strapi specifically. Okay. That's our function there. But this actually should not be a function, if I'm not mistaken. Nope, it should not be a function. Well, it should be a function, but this function should return an object. So to return the object, we're going to wrap it inside parentheses. And inside there, we can now specify one function called confirm order, which takes ctx and next. And now, if we do ctx.body equals OK, we go over to our route definition and just leave it as it is. You notice that our application runs. There you go. So this is one way of doing it, right? If you have it inside your core controller, right? So moving on from there, what we're going to do now is actually bring in the, yeah, so this is actually one of the ways of doing it. You can nest it inside here. The other thing that you can do, which I'll show you how, what we're going to do is, you can also override the custom controllers, or not the custom controllers, the core controllers by specifying their name here, right? You can completely override them by doing something like this. So this is a complete override of that, and just saying you want to have your find function that just returns OK. Or if you wanted, you can actually tap into this controller by saying const entity equals await super.find, and inside there you're going to pass in your context. And then after that, you can return, actually here you have stuff like your data and your meta, I believe, because that's what's returned from the core controller of a Strapi content type. And there we can also pass in our data and meta as a response. And then here we can perform actions after we've made the default find action for a controller. Okay, so let's go ahead and move further along. The difference between ctx.body OK and return OK. Functionally right now, functionally you shouldn't have any sort of difference. One of the main differences is how it's basically returned to the client, right? OK is just going to be OK, that's it. Whereas if you were to return an object or return OK, it's going to return a string as OK. In this case, maybe to return an empty HTML page that just has OK in it. So let's move along just a bit further. Now by adding the actual logic of our controller, which is very important. So what did we talk about in the beginning of what we're trying to do here? We're trying to create a controller or a route that allows us to confirm orders. Okay, so there's a few aspects of confirming an order. We need to know what order is trying to be confirmed. And after that, we also need to know what user is trying to confirm this order. So to actually know what order is being confirmed, if you notice inside our routes definition here, we passed in this ID as a parameter for our URL. We're going to pull that parameter out for us to use. So we're going to say const ID equals ctx.request.params. Okay, we're going to log that out real quick, and we're going to open up this extension called Thunder Client, which is going to help us make HTTP requests to our API. Create a new request, specify the URL, confirm, and we just specify one for now. We don't need to specify anything else. We're going to make it a post request and send. So you see we have a forbidden error. Okay. Why do you have a forbidden error? Because by default, none of your APIs, none of your default APIs created with content types are accessible publicly, right? We need to actually add those permissions inside Strapi. So we'll go back to Strapi, come to our settings. Under the users and permissions plugin, we're going to tap roles, go to public, and inside order, you're going to notice we have confirm order, which is a new action that's part of Strapi now because we created a controller for it. We're going to click it and make it available to the public. Just for testing purposes, we'll disable this afterwards. Yes, we can use API tokens also. This is if you want to identify a user, you can either use username and password or API tokens. For this tutorial though, or for this workshop, I'm going to be using username and password. Okay, now if we actually send this request, it says not found error. Why does it say not found error, but we actually have been able to see our parameter? It's because we aren't sending anything back to the client. In this case, if we return the ID, oops, my bad, I forget that it's actually in the client. If we return the ID here and send it, you see we get an ID back. Cool. So now we know what order people are trying to confirm. The next thing, we need to know who is trying to confirm this order. So conf, or we want to log out if a user is authenticated or not. So how do you know if a user is authenticated or not? That inside Strapi is passed into, is attached to ctx.state.user. So inside this, if we make a request, you'll notice that nothing has been logged out because there is no idea for us to know what user is logged in. So let's go ahead and create a new user and log in with that user, but through our API to get that authentication, get that token. So we'll go to our content manager, user. We're going to create a new user. We're going to name them tests at test.com, similar to my admin user. By the way, admin users and users permissions users are not the same thing. So they can have the same emails, but one won't be able to access the other. Or one doesn't have the same capabilities as the other, i.e. this user I'm creating here won't be able to log into the admin, only use the API. So we're going to specify password, very secure, they're confirmed, they're not blocked, their role is authenticated, and we can save. Cool. Going back here, we're going to log in inside our body. Let me see if I can just expand this for us. There we go. Inside our body, we're going to change this to test@test.com. And our password is just going to be password123. We're going to send it. And you notice that our request was okay. And we have gotten back a JWT and also details about the user. Nice. So we're going to take this JWT token because we need that in our confirmation request. We're going to pass that inside our authentication headers here, or actually here, right? It's just a basic header. This just tells you how to specify it. You notice if we create a bearer token and enter the token there like that, inside headers, it's the equivalent of saying authorization and then specifying bearer and then our token afterwards. It's just a long string. They're equivalent. When we send this request now, you notice that we get a forbidden error again because now we're authenticated. So are we allowed to confirm orders as authenticated users? No. So let's disable this feature for unauthenticated users, as well as find one, save that, go back to authenticated, and now authenticated users can make the request. Great. And now you can see ctx.state.user actually has what we need here, right? You notice it's going to print out the actual full object of the user. This is on the server side. Make sure you don't return this information out to the client side. Make sure you sanitize all your outputs. If you're ever going to be outputting a user, we do recommend just using whatever service is already inside the user's permissions plugin if you're going to show a user out to the public, or at least sanitize the user so that fields like password, reset password token, and confirmation token aren't visible to the public. Okay, great. So moving on from there, we notice now that we're actually able to see who is trying to confirm this order. So we're going to say const user equals ctx.state.user. Perfect. So now what is the next order of business that we want here? Say we want to now create or actually find that order, right, inside our database. And then we want to change some parameters about it. To do that, we're going to get the order. And for this, I'm going to be using the Strapi entity service, right? There's two ways to, no, this is actually Strapi version 4. The roles are not, sorry, I'm responding to a question in the chat from Shami, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. The reason why you're able to see the role here is because it populates on the server side, but will not populate on the client side, i.e. from any API endpoint that is part of the user's permissions plugin. You're not able to see the role. So population there is not enabled by default unless it is specified. Also, there was a bug about that, but that bug has actually been fixed. There was a population bug inside the user permissions plugin, but it's been fixed now. So if you do specify that you want to populate roles when you fetch a user from the content API, it will work. Okay, heading back, you notice, do you need to destructure Strapi even though you're not using it? We're going to use it right now. So there's two ways for you to fetch an entity or a piece of content from Strapi. You can either use the entity service or you can use services that are already built into Strapi, right? In this case, I'm going to use the entity service and I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're going to wait until that operation is done. And then we're going to say strapi.entity service. The entity service, depending on what operation you're trying to perform, right, has got certain extended options to it. In this case, we have CRUD operations, but we want to find one order. So we're going to say find one. And this takes in, as you can see there, the UID of the thing we're trying to find. So in this case, it's API, order, and order, I believe. And our parameters, in this case, first of all, we're going to specify the ID of this order we're trying to find, which is ID there, this. And then we're going to close it. Okay. Let's check our progress. Oops, my bad. Let's close that and make the request. Whoops. Order not found. There is something going wrong. I think I have a wrong UID for my order. It's should be correct. Ah, thanks. Yeah, it's a double colon. Thank you, Mervin. There we go. Done. Perfect. So let's go ahead and now we can run the request. Perfect. So this says null because there's no order that's been created. Nothing can be returned. But this is going to be working just fine. So we have our order there, and there's a few things that we want to change about this order, right? We want to change the state of its confirmation. We want to change when it was confirmed. Okay. When will 4.2 be a stable release? I'm not quite sure. We do have a release schedule. It's available also publicly on GitHub, I believe. So you can just go check the releases and see the timeline to the next release. So yeah, we want to change these fields here, whether it's confirmed or not, and the confirmation date. So let's go ahead and do that. But for that, you also notice I did this just to show you how to use the entity service. We don't actually need to pull out this order specifically, right? We can just go ahead and use the entity service and update a record. To do that, you can just say const update, or actually, we don't even need to pull out that value. We can just say update or await Strapi entity service dot update. We're going to pass in our UID, okay, which is order.order. We're going to pass in the an object. And inside that object, we're going to pass in the ID, which is just ID, so we can leave it like that. And we're also going to pass in the data we want to change. We want to confirm, set confirmed as true, and we want to change the date this was confirmed. So we're going to say date confirmed to be that. And once we're done confirming the order, all I want to be able to return is just an API message that says confirmed. Okay. Oops, there's a problem there. Oop, my bad. Should not have put that in there. Develop, if I can spell. Cool, so we can get rid of this. We don't need to do this. And also this, we don't need to do to have this here. One of you asked, have we created an order? Jude or Judd, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, asked if we have created an order. No, we haven't. And I'm going to show you the reason for this in the next thing we're about to do, which is creating an order, which is very important. Okay. So this is our basic flow for confirming an order. We're going to come and add one last feature to this, which is send an email after confirmation. Okay, so this is going to be something we're going to do once we touch on services. So before that, let's just complete our controller stuff. Now, as Judd asked, did we create an order yet? And we didn't. You see, looking at how our application is built, our order has got an owner specified. Okay. Now, by default, when creating a user, you just don't want to pass in an owner ID, for example. You wouldn't want to do that. That's not really secure. You would want the order to be, or the owner to be inferred from the request. Okay. So if we want, just let me know if my audio is okay. Please just confirm that. Do we have good audio? Audio is fine. Great. Okay. Cool. I just wanted to make sure that audio is all good. From there, what we're going to do now, like I was talking about, we need to be able to specify the owner of this order, right? Can't create the order and pass it into the user just like that. Somebody who has access to this API can create orders in the name of other people, which shouldn't be the case. So what do we do then? We don't necessarily need to go and define a new controller for creating an order, because our order right now is pretty basic. We need all these fields. So we can just utilize the same API that comes built into the application, right? So we go back to authenticated in our settings, or in our role settings. We go to the order content type, and we're going to tick create and enable that. That's going to be available at API /API/orders. It's going to be a post request. So we're going to save this. And now, before we can actually use this, what we want to do is customize the create controller. To do that, to customize the create controller, what we're going to do is create another asynchronous function called create. It's going to be an asynchronous function. It's going to take in CTX and next, like that. What we want to do is, what's the difference between using entity service and direct queries like Strapi.query? So Strapi.query allows you to step close at the database layer, whereas entity service is, it adds abstraction on top of Strapi.query, right? So the level goes the query API, entity service, and actually no, sorry, that's a confusion. Strapi.query is the top layer, right? It's the one with maximum abstraction. Entity service is just below that, right? So then you're able to make a bit more custom queries, more than what Strapi.query would allow, for example. And then a layer below that, closer to the DB, is if you just use Strapi.db. It's there in the docs. If you want to be able to see how to step closer to the database layer and make your requests like that. So no, DB, sorry, not EV, DB. So we're gonna go ahead and customize our controller here by doing data meta. We're gonna pull that back, and then we're gonna say super.find, and we're going to pass in context. So why super.find? Like we mentioned, we do have core controllers here already exposed inside this this function that you're seeing. And we need to access them by calling super, which is the wrapper around our controllers that we're specifying. I'm trying to simplify my wording as much as possible. Also, it's the best way I understand it. It really helps me understand what I'm doing better. So super.find basically means from the core controllers, run the find controller with the context, okay? Once that's done, you're going to get back some kind of data, okay? So we're going to return that data and the meta. Meta is going to hold information like, right now for like find requests, it holds pagination data and stuff like that, but in future, Meta is going to hold different kinds of data that you can attach to your request, right? But isn't necessarily relevant to your data object itself. So moving from here, what we're going to do now is we're going to say, when actually specifying the user for this request, we want to, oh, actually, no, it's supposed to be data.create, my bad. Super.create, sorry, not find. So before we actually create that user before we actually create the order with the user, what we want to do is pull it from this, like we did in the beginning, by saying const user equals ctx.state.user. And then what we can do is just say data.user equals user. So every time, right before, my bad, what's happening here? Super is not defined. That is odd. Oop, wrong place. Is it this or super? Let's go ahead and debug this. Anybody in the chat to let me know what I'm doing wrong? Let's just go ahead and reference with the docs just so we're sure. This is part of the game, people. Every now and then something may not work exactly like we expected it to work. So it's always good to reference the docs when you can. You know, we go to backend customization, controllers, extending core controllers, and collection type examples. We have super.find, which is pretty unusual that it won't let me find, or it won't let me use the super command, but is it because of the way it was defined? Somebody has dropped a hint for us. So what we can do is async create, get rid of this, maybe a JavaScript nuance, and then we say that, and then that. So we've refactored this. Now it's working. So we had to define a function, whereas before we defined a key that maps to a function. Those are two different things inside JavaScript. So the function is the only, if you define it as a function, that's the only way it's able to access the containing objects properties or keys. So we just changed it from an arrow function to an actual function named create. So now it's working fine. Cool. Thanks, Charlie. That helped me figure out what I had done wrong. Okay, so we have customized the core controller of our content type create, right? So now instead if somebody were to just pass in user and pass in an ID from the request, we're going to use what user is actually logged in, because that's how you're supposed to do it in a secure way. Okay, so now we're done. Let's go ahead and make a new request here. And this new request is going to make an HTTP call to localhost 1337 API orders. It's going to be a post request. Let's remember that we also do need to specify, this is going to fail, of course. I just need it to appear here so I can rename it. Create order. Please name your request. It's really easy to find them that way. This is actually confirm order, so we're going to name that. That way we don't have to guess. Perfect. Looks like we have just a little over 10 minutes to go, so we're going to work through a lot of this, not too quickly. We may go just a tiny bit over just so we can cover everything we wanted to cover, but then we'll try to keep it within time. This is the bulk of the workshop, basically. Okay, so our create order request is here. Perfect. So we're going to make a request here. Now, one other thing we need to do before we can actually create an order is go back into our content manager and just create one or two products, right? So we're going to name it. What product should we create? Strapi t-shirt, like that. What's our code? Is going to be strp001. That's one product we've done. Any ideas for something else we can create? Doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just a hoodie, nice, cool. We're gonna create a hoodie, and it's gonna be strp 0002 or 002. Nice, a lot of them come in. So we're gonna create the last one, which is gonna be coffee mug and computer. Okay, cool. So we're gonna have a mug. strp 0003. Cool, I think that's fine for now. Just in the interest of time, I think that's going to be fine for now. Thanks for the suggestions. So we now have our products and we have those product IDs, which is great. So we're going to go back here and now we can actually create an order. Okay, so to create an order, this is going to be a post request and we need to specify the body of this request. But before that, let's not forget to authorize the request. Okay, so authorization, we have our bearer token there applied. There was a question, what were the order fields? Okay, the order fields, if we go back to our content type builder, you see our order fields are owner, confirmed, confirmation date, and the products. Okay, so With that in mind, we're going to go to body, the body of our request. I added user and not owner inside the controller. Oh, okay. There we go. Thank you, Bruno. That's perfect, actually. Wow. Nice, nice. No. I mean, you're absolutely correct, actually. Thank you so much. We want to specify the owner as the user and not the user as the user, which is 100% correct. Thank you so much. Other thing we didn't, well, no, actually, everything else here is perfectly fine. So we're going to create an order. Our JSON content is going to be structured this way. We're going to have a data key. Inside our data, we're going to specify products. Oops. And these products are going to be an array of IDs. Okay. So we're going to pull a few IDs. I think for now, I'm just going to create an order with one thing in it. Right. The next thing that we need for our order is what? At the moment, just that. We don't need to do anything else. We don't need to specify whether it's confirmed. This owner key is going to be ignored even if we specify it. So not necessary at all. So for now, that's it. We can send the request. Ooh, we have something wrong. Expected. No, we don't have to pass the owner because that's not secure. What we did inside our controller, I will show you here, is we're taking the owner from the context of the request, i.e. the person who's authenticated is automatically the owner and not the person who we decide is the owner, right? So we're taking the use or the standpoint as if this was an app that's being used by the public, right? Either from like a website or an app on the phone or something like that. So that's the mindset we're using for this. So we're going to go back here and, oh, actually, no, we had an error that we have to take a look at. An expected token. Is that an expected token inside our request? Shall we make the request now? Oh, nice, done. So our order has been created, right? These are the attributes that we have for our order, sorry, and our owner is there. It's been specified. Let me just see if I can expand that to make this a bit clearer. So you see, we have our attributes. We have whether it's been confirmed or not and all that kind of stuff, and the owner of the request. You have all that data. Perfect. So it looks like our create order controller, our customized create order controller has worked exactly how we expected it to work. So now, the next thing that we have to do is actually confirm this order. Now, there's a few things that we need to note here. Should we see products? Not sure if I missed it. Oh, yes, actually, we should see the products, but we don't see them inside the response because they don't get populated by default because they are a big relation. If we go back inside our content manager, we see the order. Oh, actually, products owner and none of that has been specified. That should not be the case. I did something wrong. Again, like I mentioned, I think you just updated the response. Let's see what we have here. Ah, okay. I see. I updated the response and not actually the request. So what I did was here, right? Yeah, exactly. I'm passing the owner after it's been created and not the right way. So this is in an incorrect way of doing it like I did. So we actually need to pass it the correct way. So how are we going to pass this the correct way? What we're going to do is we're going to say ctx dot request dot body. So the meta variable holds data that could be relevant to your request. In some cases, like for the find request, it's going to hold pagination data. In this case, right now, it doesn't hold anything useful because we're dealing with one entity. But in the future, if there's ever going to be any sort of necessary information for this, also plugins can step in and pass information. Plugins will be able to step into the this part of the controller and attach information that could be relevant, right? Yeah. So here our ctx.request.body .owner is now going to be set as user. So thanks a ton, Jim. Let's go ahead and run this request again. Looks like that's worked again. Let's go ahead and see what we have in our content manager. Ooh, still nothing. Let's go ahead and take a look at our docs and just make sure everything we're doing is correct. This usually happens, people. Every now and then you're gonna have like an issue where certain customizations that you do don't really work exactly as you expect them to work. Our goal is just to work through that right now. Okay, let's go ahead and say const we're going to destructure our context, and we're going to have that, and then we're going to say owner is going to be user.id, because I think we're not supposed to specify the whole user, just the ID should be perfectly fine for this. Okay, and then we're going to pass in our new context here. So what I did is instead of mutating the context, I'm creating new context from that. So passing in all the properties of the context. Ooh, someone will catch that. This is supposed to be requests. Like that, like that. Perfect. So we are going to not mutate the context. Fingers crossed. Ooh, internal server error. CTX dot. What is not a function? Oh, okay. We have some messages in the chat. Body data owner. Interesting. Okay. CTX is not a function. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Let's see if we can debug this real quick. Ooh, interesting stuff. Another internal server error. New CTX is not defined. I should have changed that. So I've deleted, or I've commented out the spreads part just so we can debug this correctly. Like we can debug this step by step and see. Ooh, we still have nothing there. Anybody know what we need to? So you can try CTX request body owner user ID, ooh, which is ooh, okay. Could that be what I was missing? Let's see, Mervin. Nope, it's not what I was missing. Don't you guys just love debugging code every now and then? Okay, let's go ahead and so let's go ahead and just create a new create controller. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new yeah, exactly. Let's go ahead and change up well, if we log the CTX and see more, we should be able to still see what we need. If you see log ctx.request.body, right? We'll be able to see exactly what we're looking for. If we still create an order, you see we have data, products, so on and so forth. But in this case, we also want to specify the owner. So yeah, write ctx.body inside the create parameter. One sec, let's just, well, actually, no, you just pass in the ctx and then it's actually the controller, the core controller knows to pull out the body from there. So it's the same as leaving out request.body and just doing ctx.body. So like you mentioned, if we go to this and run the request, it's still going to be the same sort of thing, right? If we take a look at our orders there, still pretty much the same. It's not going to throw an error because it knows to pull out the correct information. In this case, actually, it's also not defined. But anyway, back to the objective, like I was saying, in the interest of time, let's go ahead and just create a new controller altogether for creating an order, right? It doesn't hurt. So what we're going to do is then say const order equals await strapi.entity service dot create API order. We're going to pass in some data. The data is going to be products, is going to be ctx dot request dot body dot products. And so it's ctx dot request dot body dot products because when you see here, we logged out our ctx request body somewhere down here. It's actually supposed to be data dot products, just so I can catch that. And we're going to specify the owner, who is going to be the user.id, which should work just fine, right? We're not going to return meta, we're just going to return the order itself by customizing our create controller altogether. Perfectly fine. If we create the order now, we get back this piece of information, which is now just the order and a bunch of other stuff, which isn't defined currently. So if we go back to our orders, you see we now have an order. Let's just go ahead and get rid of all these others. Just for clarity's sake, delete them, confirm. So we now have an order which has things specified. We have our Strapi t-shirt specified as a product, and we have the owner specified. Okay. Now that we've created an order, the next thing we want to do is we also want to be able to confirm these orders. Now, there's a few things about the confirm order that I left out that I think we should talk about right before we end our talk. One is the security of this endpoint. Right now, anybody who, or should I say right now, your order can be, or an order can be created by somebody who is authenticated, which is great. We want that. But there's a few other things that we need to think about, right? Say we don't want our, we don't want this order to be verified by somebody who doesn't own the order, right? Right now, if you're authenticated, you can confirm any order as long as you pass in the ID. That's not correct. We want people who actually made the order to be able to confirm the order. There's many ways to do this, right? For the sake of illustration, for the sake of actually making or showing you how to touch on other aspects of customizing Strapi, we're going to create a new policy, okay? This policy is going to be called an isOwner policy. So to do that, let's go ahead and stop our server. We're going to run yarn Strapi generate using the CLI tool. We're going to create a new policy. The policy name is going to be called isOwner. isOwner like that. Where do we want to pin this? To an existing API. The existing API is going to be named order. Cool. Inside our files here, when you go to src API order and policies, you see we have a new file called isOwner. So now you can see that there's a bit of boilerplate here. So our isOwner policy is basically, so the difference between adding a policy to the root and to a specific API is, just as the name suggests, this policy is either going to be applied to just one specific endpoint or all endpoints in a particular scope, right? So it depends on the scope that you define, application-wide or not application-wide. In this case, if you want to use a policy in multiple places, right? Not just this API. You can make it a global one and apply it in multiple places. In this case, we just want it to be available inside the order, the order controller. So Jed, I think you're going to be able to take a look at the recording. It's going to be recorded and uploaded. What's the difference between a controller and a policy? Thanks for asking. The difference between a controller and a policy is a controller is one that you use to interact with your data, right? It's specific. You're going to have, you're going to actually perform like custom control flow with your data, whereas a policy really deals with requests that are coming in and out of your application. In this case, we want to stop all requests, or we want to stop any operation that doesn't belong to a user. So we want to stop creation if you don't, we want to stop confirmation if you don't own the order that you're trying to confirm. So to do that, we're going to utilize a few things. So let's go ahead and, well, we don't really need that. We don't really need this. The structure of this is this. Yeah, exactly. A policy is like a guard. Thanks, Charlie. So here's a few things. Here's a few things with how policies work. There is going to be a condition. If it passes, go ahead and just continue running. If not, stop running, right? This is the quick gist of it. So in our case, what's our condition? We know that each policy is going to have the parameter that we specified, like the ID of the order that's actually trying to be confirmed. We can go ahead and log out what policy context brings us. So we can see what happens when a policy is fired. So let's log out policy context. And to actually apply this policy to the route that we created, we're going to go back here to our routes and specify a new key called policies. Did I spell that correctly? Nice. And inside there, it's going to be called API is owner. Oops, my bad, is owner, like that. Start our server. There we go. So now our policy is attached to this API that we created to confirm an order. Let's go ahead and close these. Come right back here to confirm order. We want to confirm the first order, but we do have a policy attached to it. So if we send this request, we have an internal server error. Undefined attribute ID or level attribute operator ID. Penya@gmail.com, what exactly do you mean by 7? So here you see we have an undefined attribute operator level ID. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we have inside our confirm. Everything looks okay here, if I'm not mistaken. Does the order policy name? No. Well, actually, yes. Actually, thanks for specifying that. Okay. Oh, okay. I think I see what I'm doing wrong. We should specify it this way: order.is owner, since it's just going to be a policy specifically meant for the order API. If we confirm it now, we still have the same error. Well, the only difference is this. So let's just check and make sure everything is okay. Still, looks like we're doing something wrong inside our controller. So we can go ahead and take a look and see what's happening there. Okay. Inside our confirm order, we have something going on. Ooh, order ID is deleted. Okay, that's something that I didn't realize. It's supposed to be 7. Ah, okay, nice. So if we do that, ooh, we still have 500. Ah, error inside updates. Here. Ah, I see. So it's, there we go. Nice. Let's go and just take a look and see what Jim specified or has told us there's an issue inside update. So if we go to our entity service docs here, entity service, there we go. Wait for that to load. You notice that we created an error inside our update function. So if we go to update, what we're supposed to do is specify it in this manner. We have our UID, the ID, and then an object with the data key. Thanks a lot, Jim. Perfect. So that should be perfectly fine now. We can go back and specify our policy. Just a quick refresher for how you're going to see policies specified. You go inside your policies docs, you specify them in this way. So you're going to have, if it's an API, yeah, no, Charlie, I can't wait for the API or for the TypeScript functionality to be stable, right? To be honest, I'm a big fan of TypeScript myself. So yeah, let's go back into our routes. Go ahead and specify our routes like that, which right now should be perfectly fine. So if we go back to confirm order and send this, nice. Thanks a lot, Jim. Cool. So now we want to actually continue working on our policy. If you notice, we completely skipped over the policy altogether because we're supposed to be able to see our policy context. So let's just go ahead and remove this stuff and stop the request altogether if the policy doesn't succeed the way we wanted it to succeed. Another thing I noticed is confirm order. Yep, order is owner. Our policies are defined correctly. Yep. Confirm order, make sure this shouldn't work. Oh, this shouldn't be working actually. So should be in the config object. Correct. Like that. Policies. I spelled that correctly. API order dot is confirmed. Oop, is owner actually. My bad. Strapi didn't like that at all. So there's a question from Spenya. If it's already confirmed, will it work? So we're testing now. We're going to go through this flow all over again with some fresh new orders and stuff like that, just so you can see the kind of work that we've done and how far we've gotten. So this is just part of like the development process we're going through all together as a group. Nice. So now we're able to see the context of our policy, and we specifically or on purpose made it fail. So you see we have a policy error there. So we have a ton of stuff inside our policy context that we can go through. Let's just go over to the top. But one of the things that we need to be able to take a look at is our request information. So inside here, pull out the request object so we can inspect that specifically. Nice. And from there, we want to pull out the parameters of our request and specifically the ID parameter. So inside here, we want to pull out our parameters so we can be able to see those. You see we have an ID named 7. Perfect. So like I said, we want to make sure the order being confirmed is owned by the requester. So what we're going to do is now say ID equals policy context dot requests dot params. Okay. And from there, what we're going to do is we're just going to, you wouldn't do this here. We're going to do it for illustrating purposes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make a call to fetch the order that's being called and check to see if the owner is actually correct. So what we're going to do is we're going to say const order equals await strapi dot entity service API order. Oops, this is supposed to be dot find one. Okay. And we're going to find one based on that ID. Cool. Now what we're going to say is if, oh, actually, also the next thing we need to do is pull who's actually authenticated to this. So we're going to say const user equals ctx.state.user. In this case, it's not going to be ctx, it's going to be policy context. Just so you know, it's just the request context. I know it's because there's an if statement. We're going to continue later on. So what we're going to say is we're going to say if the order owner ID equals the user.id, we're going to say return true. What that means is, yeah, go ahead and continue executing. But if it doesn't equal that, what we're going to say is fail. Now, we may also want to make this fail in a more, we'll call it graceful manner. So what we're going to do is, let's go ahead and pull out a tool from Strapi's utility. Oh, okay. So I said normally you wouldn't do it here. So this, if you make too many requests to the database inside your policy, your request essentially slows down, right? So what you want to do maybe is drop it as a service inside your controller before it executes, right? So now let's go ahead and just pull out a few tools from the Strapi utils package. So we're going to say const utils equals require at Strapi utils. What do we need from here? We need to pull out what we're going to call errors. So Strapi has some standard errors that you can use and attach to your application. In our case, we want to throw a policy error with a useful message. So in this case, we're going to pull out policy error, or we're going to destructure policy error. And what we can do is go ahead and just throw the policy error, right? We're going to throw a new policy error with a message. You're not allowed to do this. Again, the message can be custom to what you're trying to do. So we're going to run our application again. Oop, there's an issue. Cool. Let's go ahead and make this an async function. Should that work? Nice. So we can go back and confirm the order. We have an issue, okay. Cannot read property ID of undefined. Why? ID should be perfectly defined. Yeah, if you can't confirm an order that you didn't make, right? So we don't want anybody to be able to confirm an order on behalf of anybody. And in this case, admins of the Strapi admin are not able to make requests to the API because there are different types of users. We have admin users and users and permissions users. In this case, only users and permissions users are the ones who are working. And there's no concept of administrators on users and permissions. That only exists on the Strapi admin side. So we're being told that we cannot read property ID of thing that's undefined. No, params is actually defined. I think we do, we may have something here specifically. So let's go ahead and log out our user. Let's go ahead and conclude as soon as we can. So we're going to log out our user as a check. As you see, our user exists. Perfect. In our policy, you can see we have a policy error. You're not allowed to do this. Cool. And we have user, and we do have an ID on the user. Perfectly fine. So the next culprit is our order. Are we not getting data back from our order? Could be. Actually, no, we do have some data there. So, okay. So one of the things that we need to do, which I forgot to do, is populate the owner. You're correct, Lloyd. So inside our config, we can then specify populate owner, right? So we can be able to actually populate that owner from the order. There we go. Now the owner is actually populating, right? And that's going to work. Cool. Let's go back to our policy. And now we can get rid of that. And now our policy should be working perfectly fine, i.e., if I own it, I can get confirmed. But if I don't own it, i.e., I'm not the exact same user, maybe if there was a user with a different thing authenticated, it's basically going to say, nope, sorry, you don't own this order, you can't confirm it at all, right? So that's basically how you work with policies within Strapi. So far we've touched quite a few. Can we update by ID owner? Not just that. If I'm not mistaken, that should not be possible in this case. You can have a check afterwards, after you pull that to do it, right? So that's one of the ways you would implement this kind of an is owner policy. You'd have to have a separate check. In this case, entities are addressed by their ID inside the entity service. So yeah, that's us taking a look at things like taking a look at a few things. We've touched on we've touched on controllers, we've touched on routes, policies. So to end this workshop, let's go ahead and talk about a few other things that you might want to do whilst customizing your application. So say maybe you want to, how can I say, integrate your application with another tool, maybe like a CRM to manage these orders, right? I know that I created something called order service, which is this folder here. What is my order service? So let's go ahead and just close a few of these windows out because they're not really necessary for us right now. Inside our order service, we created this simple core application. It's just going to be listening and print out what it receives. So the purpose of this is I'm going to show you how webhooks essentially are going to work. Okay, so let's go ahead and cd into our order service, and then we're going to run npm run start. So you're going to see our order service is listening on port 3000, like we specified here. Cool. Let's go back into our Strapi application, go to settings, then go to webhooks. Create a new webhook. So a webhook is going to allow you to communicate from your application to another application when a specific event has happened. In this case, we're going to name it Tail CRM, right? The URL is going to be HTTP localhost 3000. We're not going to specify any sort of headers, and we're going to specify that we want this to occur, let's say, on every event, right? We're going to save it. So for a quick test, let's just trigger it so you can be able to see error 404. Oh, actually, we did receive a post request here. The reason why it said error 404 is because we don't actually return anything onto the body. So we can just go ahead and change that and say CTX body equals okay as well. It doesn't have to return anything useful. We just want to log out the kinds of information that's being passed into our request, right? So if we go back to our Strapi application and trigger it, now it worked as a success. And you can see the information has also been accepted here, and you can pull out the information from there, right? As an example, by running ctx.requests. If I'm not mistaken, it should be .body. If we trigger that, undefined, oops, payload. Is it still undefined? Trigger. Okay, still undefined. Let's just go ahead and pull that out of our good old friend, the docs. Thanks for coming through, Spenya. See ya. Really enjoyed your company. So here's an example payload of the kind of information that's sent. And we can see that our webhooks send a post request, right? Oh, actually, no, I know why this isn't working. It's because I don't have a body parser implemented on my core application here. So if you had a body parser, for example, the way you do it in Express, this would work. So maybe we can just like implement that quickly. Let's see what body parser middleware exists for core, so we can actually be able to see the request body. So all we need to do is install this core body parser and then pass it into our application. So we can go ahead and stop this, run npm install that. Whilst that's installing, we can say const body parser equals require core body parser. And then we can say app.use body parser, like that. npm run start. And now we're going to have a request body on this request visible. If we trigger it, there you go. You see an event has been triggered, right? So this was a trigger test with nothing useful there. If we were to do something more sensible or more useful, like create an order, for example, so if we go back and create another order and send it, you see that another request has been received. In this case, it happened on the model order. The operation was a create operation at this time, and you have the information there. Okay, great. So this is a bunch of like how a bunch of use cases, or I guess one use case of how you use webhooks, right? Or I guess the last thing we can talk about before we end is middlewares. So middlewares is also something that is very useful as you build your application. There is many use cases for middlewares. In our case, one of the use cases for middlewares would be, let's say we want to limit the way people are creating orders or the way people are authenticating to our application. We want to limit that rate. To be able to do that, we can just go ahead and create a simple implementation of that, right? So one simple implementation of that, first of all, would require us to install a package. So we're going to say yarn add not add, sorry, it's going to be core 2 rate limits. So we're going to install this package first. It's going to be a quick and easy implementation. This source code that you're going to see me copy and paste is going to be pulled directly from the users and permissions plugin. In the interest of time, we're not going to just go ahead and just code everything out right now. So let's go ahead and just pull the example of rate limiting as it's done inside the users and permissions plugin. So there's the source code. We're going to say yarn Strapi generate. We're going to generate a middleware. The middleware name is going to be rate limit to an existing API order. Now we have a new folder called middlewares inside our API, and we have one file here called rate limit. So we're just going to replace it with this text here. By the way, this code again is going to be living on GitHub. So please don't worry. We may actually even create the repository right now before we close off this workshop, or immediately afterwards. So here is an implementation of rate limiting. We don't want users to be able to make too many attempts, say when confirming an order and stuff like that, or authentication. So we want to do it this way. I'm going to make a few customizations, right? I.e., I'm going to remove that because it's not necessary. But the way you actually use this is pull in the rate limit plugin for Koa, right? It's installed as a package, specify the message, and then you're going to return the middleware, right? In this case, we are returning an object with multiple, or we're returning an object where we want to pull in multiple different configs from different places. So the first thing is maybe an empty config. Here we're going to have the interval at which we want our request to be able to happen. We want a maximum of 5 of them. these are the prefix keys, and this is the message that we're going to specify here. Prefix key is going to be stored inside the Strapi memory, like the core storage, to keep track of who's actually making these requests. And then config, i.e. extra config that is compatible with this rate limit plugin. You can read more about it here. Let's see. It's COA2 rate limit. So yeah, there you go. You can read more about this plugin here, or actually here's the GitHub page for the plugin. And you'll be able to see more about the configs that you can pass into the plugin. You have like the time to wait, the delay after, and stuff like that. The interval can even be an object where you have more human readable ways of specifying intervals. Okay, so that's that part done. And if you're going to actually attach this middleware to your request, what you can do is go back to your route. Inside config, you can just go and specify middlewares and specify API order rate limit. So now we actually have rate limiting on our endpoint, right? Which is a really great thing. So this is just an example of some of the things that you're able to do. Actually, so we've done a rate limit on confirm order. Maybe let's just try and test that out. Confirm, 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 confirm. You see, the maximum was 5 times to confirm. In our case, we can specify it only as 1. That way now we can wait for 1 minute before we can actually try to confirm an order again. Exactly. It's really, really cool. These are just some of the ways that you can customize your Strapi application. We have, is there a life cycle difference between middlewares and policies? So if not, what is the need for both? Okay, so there is a life cycle difference. In our case, middlewares are executed first and then policies next. After that, and then the request is passed off to controllers inside your Strapi application. So in our case, we don't want to interact in any way with Strapi, right? We don't want to interact in any way with Strapi or the Strapi entities or Strapi collections. We just want to have a specific functionality just before our request is handled. This is when you're going to use middlewares. In our case, you see inside our policy, we stepped in and actually used or made the call to Strapi and the entity service and stuff like that. That's not necessarily what you want to do inside your middleware, right? Inside your middleware, you just want it to be completely agnostic to Strapi and put your code inside there. It's a really great use case for things that are completely not used or not useful for Strapi, right? Maybe you want to send analytics information to know what kind of request is being hit the most and stuff like that. This is where you do it. Okay, so our time limit leaves us with just a little around 27 minutes left. Before we go, just for everybody wondering, we're going to go ahead and just create a repository, just so you know that I'm going to actually upload this to Git when we're done. I may not do it on screen because I'm afraid of sharing anything that's private with you, but I can do it off screen and send the link actually. So let's just do that together. Commit, initial commit. Oops, go ahead. So let's just go ahead and change the name to main. And off screen, I can go ahead and create a repository for this. Okay, repositories. Okay, so in the chat, just let me know, what was your favorite part of this workshop? Do you feel like there's certain things that could be improved? Go ahead and share your feedback. But yeah, thanks a ton for coming through. There's actually one last thing that I would like to touch on before we go, because I was supposed to touch on it but didn't. It's a very useful part of customizing Strapi. So yeah, that's the link to today's workshop. Git remote, add origin like that. Oops. There. Ooh. weird. When should we use life cycles? They look like middlewares. So life cycles are going to be used immediately after you have performed an operation with your content. So immediately after you've created something, or right before you create something, you want to use them there. The reason why they exist is it creates a separation of concerns within your application. You need to take a step back before, as you're designing the way your application is going to be customized, and put the right things in the right places, right? So in this case, there are some things that you could have put in a life cycle, for example, right? Maybe the is owner policy could have been done in the life cycle and then you throw an error from there. But maybe your request has gone too far down the chain, right? Because life cycles are maybe the last things that are going to be looked at. It's going to go through your controller and everything, and you're going to be talking about the model, specifically the model level, which is like the second to last level before the database level, right? So you want to have that separation of concerns. You want to make a limit higher up in the request chain as opposed to lower down, right? It depends on how you're going to do it. So in this case, we wanted to do it higher up just for maximum security. For middlewares, if you want to change something beforehand, maybe you wanted to make an API call, pull in some data before you save it, and then save it, you do it inside your life cycles. It would still work perfectly fine there, right? So there's no security concern for something like that. You don't really have to think about authenticated users and stuff like that. So you'll be perfectly fine there. Yeah, it is actually a good publication for a blog, which is something I'm going to share with our team. So yeah, okay. Moving on from there, there's one last thing I thought I should touch on, which is services. We haven't talked about services. They are a very important and integral part of customizing application. So say we want to create a custom service, right? Let's just quickly do that. The syntax is similar to the way it's done with controllers. And we want to create a service called send email, right? Which is going to be an async function named send email after, say, a request has been confirmed. This has to be an object like that. So send email, and we want certain fields to be here. So let's say we want the order ID and the user, okay? Or yeah, just the full user information. So here is where you'd make a call, for example, to send an email to a user. Strapi does have a service built in to allow you to send emails. If you go to the documentation here and go to email specifically, you can send an email in this way. So if you copied that and pasted it here, by the way, don't forget to configure your email provider, right? So you're going to specify the fields here based off of things like true is going to be the user dot email in this case. From doesn't have to be specified because you specify that inside your provider, but you can specify it from, but in this case, we don't need to. We don't need to CC or blind carbon copy. Maybe we need a reply to email, but in this case, we don't really need one. The subject is going to be there. So we're going to say your order has been confirmed. The text is going to be, I don't know, something useful, and the HTML is also going to be something useful. For this particular case, I don't really have to do that. You take in like values from order ID and stuff like that. But if you went back to your controller, here called confirm order, oops, sorry, here, I talked about send email. So what you would do is something like strapi.services. Let's see, we have Strapi services. Where is it? Where are we? I'm looking for something. Let's just pull out the syntax for that. I don't have it off the top of my head. So to actually interface with an API service, so this is an email service example that we had there, which currently isn't too necessary. So strapi.service, and then you have that, and then you can choose to send an email. So in this case, we're going to say something like strapi.services, We're going to specify our API, order.order, and then we're going to actually call the service, which is send email. And there we have a few things like the order ID. In this case, it's going to be ID from the params, right? And we're going to have the user, which is in this case ctx.state.user, right? Yeah. So after you have confirmed an order, you can actually send an email in this way. We don't need to await it in this case because email is going to be handled by a separate service that maybe may fail, and you don't want to fail to confirm an order just because your email server is down, right? Maybe there's something that you can have like a fail safe and stuff like that, like an email queue waiting. You may not want to just wait for the application to talk to whatever email server you're using. It may be slow, it may be stuff, so you don't want to degrade the experience. But yeah, that's the end of today's workshop. That's basically everything I wanted to touch. If there's anything else, please go ahead and ping me on Twitter. Just tweet at me. You can tweet at the Strapi page. Go ahead and join our Strapi Discord. So if you go to strapi.io/Discord, we have a community Discord where all of you can join, share useful information for each other or with each other, and be able to chat and converse. We also have a forum, which is available. The link is here. We have forum.strapi.io, which is perfect. So yeah, that's pretty much it. There's a question in the chat. Where is the best place to ask for help? Forum, Discord, or Reddit? I would say Discord, which is the most active. The next best place is the forum, and then Reddit, because the community is in multiple places. Those are all great places, but I do think, Discord is some place where it's going to be very active. I'm also quite active on the community Discord every now and then. I pop in and take a look and see what's actually happening. So it'll do you great to actually join the Discord. The link is available there. It's strapi.io / it's actually discord.strapi.io. My bad. Like that. That's going to redirect you to the community Discord, and you can be able to join from there. So yeah, that's everything. There is a request for the link to the GitHub repo. Let me just post that right now. I have the link to the repository I created here. Cool. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. I really enjoyed this. I hope you did as well. Cool. So yeah, that's the end of the workshop. Here's the link to the repository for anybody who's going to want it. There you go. The source code, if you can see my screen, is available there. Once we refresh the page, you'll be able to see our Strapi application that I created with everything there. So yeah. Devarshi, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, I apologize if I'm not. Please go ahead and just share that inside the Strapi Discord, and we can be able to continue our conversation from there. At the moment, I think we are slowly reaching the limit of today's workshop. So yeah, thanks for joining, everyone. I hope you did learn a lot. Everybody have a great night, day from wherever you are. Thank you. Bye.